Greetings. I'm Philip Torsrud, and I am starting Conservative Political Forum. The reason for this is to explain a number of things that it doesn't seem that the conservative slash Republican establishment wants to bother spending the time explaining, and the failure to do so is in effect surrendering large swaths of the battlefield to the left. Now, understandably, the media does have a lot of spin on these issues. And so, to start off with, we'll pluck one of the more controversial examples, that being global warming. Now, a lot of you will assume, well, if you're concerned about global warming, you're going to vote for the Democratic Party because they're the ones that give the most lip service to that topic. But the reality is that if you look at conservative policies, you will see that their policy is superior to what the Democrats are offering when it comes to the environment. So let's start off with something very simple. What act has done more damage to the global environment than any other in the history of politics? Now, everybody should know this by now. This should be a common discussion, but it's not, because it is the permanent normalized trade relations with China, which was done by both parties, but signed by Bill Clinton. Yes, Bill Clinton signed that. And so while Al Gore, his vice president at the time, runs around lecturing people about climate change and the damage that is being done every day, what did he actually contribute? Well, what he actually contributed was offshoring massive amounts of manufacturing to China, where they don't have regulations, they don't have a environmental protection agency, they don't have rules as far as pollution, and they don't have the efficient coal, clean, what we call clean coal. And there's a number of things that go into this, especially the transportation, because when you build things there and then have to bring them back across an ocean, well, guess what? That's more pollution. So none of this is talked about, considered, but yet we have the lecturing and we have the self-righteousness, and we have these people telling us, oh yeah, we have the solutions, and the solutions, they always have the solutions, but the solutions are those that profit them greatly, meaning they're designed for the politician. See, the politician is a contractor in many instances because they are lawyers. And so you have to really parse these things and understand what actually is what. What are they talking about? And a lot of times, most people, they just don't have the time or the energy to figure this all out. And conservatives, to a fault, don't explain these things. They don't say, look, what are you talking about? The environment. Donald Trump says America first. Donald Trump wants to bring these supply chains back to America. He wants to produce things in America. Do you know how much better that would be for the environment if these things were produced using our energy, and then you didn't have to transport it as far to be delivered to the market? You don't understand how much better that would be for the environment? But yet nobody wants to talk about that. And the conservatives should be talking about that. I say conservatives, not Republicans, because many Republicans are not conservative. Okay? This is one of the problems that we have. And so we're going to be addressing these things as we go on, but we're going to take one step at a time. Now, obviously there's the hypocrisy of Al Gore unleashing the most devastating act in the history of man on the environment. And there's no shame. There's no discussion even of, geez, this was a bad idea. No, there's none of that. Then we have Obama. What did Obama do? Well, let's give this company Solyndra all kinds of money. What happened? Well, the government lost billions on that. But here's the thing. And you can look up Solyndra and what happened with Obama. We're not going to go into details on that here, because if you're interested, you can look it up. It's not rocket science. But what's important about Solyndra is that we had 8 years under Obama. If the money was taken, okay, now this is where conservative principles would come into play, and the conservatives should be talking about this. If instead of just dumping on their corporate hack friends all this money and not getting anything for it, we had said, you know what? Let's start with low hanging fruit. Okay? We have all these entities that we have to pay electric bills for all across America. Police stations, fire stations, schools, all these public places have to pay an electric bill. Right? So as a conservative, it's not a bad thing to say, you know what, well, we can do some things. There's something we can't go all out. For example, solar panels. Solar panels wouldn't be able to provide the type of energy we need for manufacturing, the type of economy that we have. But we could put these panels on a number of buildings, and they would pay for themselves over time because obviously they would pay for the electric bill. And you wouldn't have to pay these electric bills over months and years, and they'd pay for themselves essentially. So we had 8 years of Obama. We've had governors all across America. We have governors right now flush with COVID money. Flush. They have money all. What are we going to do with this money? But here's the thing. Have any of them said, you know what we should do? We should take all this money here, and we should take a percentage out, and we should put solar panels on every police station. And now let's understand that there might be some places that have done this, but not to the degree that it should be, considering all the talk that we have heard over the years by these people. Year in, year out, we hear nothing but, oh, the environment, we care about the environment. We really care. That's why we haven't done anything. Why haven't they done anything? Why haven't the Democrats run every major city in America? Does every school building in every one of these places have a solar panel? The libraries, the police stations, the fire departments? Do we have solar panels on these places? Low-hanging fruit. Now, the Republicans could easily steal the issue. They could easily come forth and say, you know what? We'll put some money into something, and we'll make it very simple, and we'll expose that the reason that this hasn't happened is because this is what Democrats do. They lecture. Oh, we're on the good side. We believe in the good things, but we're not going to actually do anything about it. And you will see this time and time again in what we're going to be talking about here. Time and time again, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They don't do what needs to be done. There's plenty that could be done. There's plenty of low-hanging fruit. Think about how simple that would have been. Okay? Remember the speech Obama gave when he was inaugurated? Oh, this is the time that the tides will go backwards and all this good stuff. I mean, it was hilarious. And he was given a Nobel Prize for this, the promise of what he was going to do. And what did he actually accomplish? Nothing. Because he didn't have the cojones to say, you know what? We're going to be giving these states money. Let's make sure that they do the little things they can do. Nope. Instead, it was insider baseball. The swamp. If you want to see the swamp writ large, that was the Obama administration. Never has there been a more status quo government than, in any aspect. The thing is, once he picked Hillary as Secretary of State and Biden as Vice President, that was the dog whistle. That was telling everybody, you know what, I talk revolution, but I am going to be status quo. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to change anything. I will be doing what we've always been doing, and that's monetize other people's suffering. Because that's what they do. That's what lawyers do. And they're all lawyers. Now, that's a whole other issue that we'll eventually get into. But obviously, you people in America who say, oh, we want change, we want change. You want change? Stop voting for people that are trained to talk out of both sides of their mouth. That's what they do. That's what a lawyer does. Lawyers monetize your suffering. Okay? They drag these cases out forever. The lawyers write the law for themselves. Do you understand that? All the laws in our country are written by legislators, mostly lawyers, who are thinking of whose interests? They're thinking of their interests. How do we build these people? How do we drag these things on for years and make people pay an arm and a leg? The same thing applies to the climate change issue. They're not trying to solve this. They're trying to monetize it. They're trying to make it so that they can benefit. They're telling you they have the solution. Well, let's do something simple. You have budgets every year. How hard would it be to tie that into the state budget? Let's say Tim Michels, the conservative, nice guy, I like him. Let's say he wins the governorship of Wisconsin. Wouldn't it be beautiful to stick it to the left and say, you know what? We're going to write this in the bill. We give Milwaukee $1 billion a year for education or whatever it is. I know they spend $1 billion. I don't think they get $1 billion, but they spend over $1 billion a year to do pretty much nothing. Whatever they give them in aid, whatever that number is, tell them, hey, a certain percent has to go to solar panels. And let's see them go crazy. Oh, you're not giving us more money, but you guys are saying that climate change is important. Well, now I'm mandating that a certain percent of the money that we are giving you is going to go for climate change. We're going to build solar panels on all the schools. Boom. They'll have to figure out what waste they have, and there's plenty, believe me. I mean, when you have pretty much 0%, 0% proficiency in math and in reading, I mean, it's a disgrace. So, you could pay people to do less. I mean, it's absurd. So you start factoring that in. You start saying, okay, we're giving you money for this. Well, 10%, 15%, 20%. We're earmarking solar panels. You go out in the market, you find the best deal. That's on you. We don't have to make this complicated. And that's what conservatives should start doing. Start making them eat this. You want to talk the talk, walk the walk. It's not rocket science. We could do this all day, every day. And guess what? We'd actually have some benefits. Now, we had 8 years of Obama and nothing got done. Nothing got done. You know how much money was spent by the government during the Obama administration? You know how much was dumped on the states? Where was the mandate that some of this go to putting solar panels on some of these public entities? There was none. We've had the Evers administration in Wisconsin. We've had a number of Democrat governors across the country. What have they done? Where have they said, we're gonna spend some money, but guess what? It's got to go. It's got to go to some. We got to put some solar panels on it. And what about you have all these schools that have they have fundraisers to build a football field and this and that. You're saying it's going to be the end of the world. It is the end of the world, according to these people. You can't have some fundraisers to put a solar panel on your local library. Where is the ambition in that? You're telling me that they'll swear up and down that, we're going to die. Okay, well, if we're going to die, we should, and, we can have all these fundraisers for the new football stadium or new football field or whatever. I'm not against football or anything like that. Love football. But if you can do that for that, how are you not capable of having some fundraisers for some solar panels to put on your local library and your local school? How is that not possible? Because it's a cudgel. The issue is a cudgel to beat the conservative opponent over the head with. And the problem is that the Democrats control the media, and it's very easy to do. And a lot of the Republicans, they just don't have the intellectual faculties to argue the point, to sit there and say, you know what you're saying doesn't really make sense because you guys aren't doing anything. Let's just take the low-hanging fruit, number one, putting these panels on the little buildings that we have that we pay for anyway. We're going to pay for electricity anyway. So if we pay for the solar panel and have a big expense one year, over the years it'll pay for itself. So that shouldn't, it's a conservative idea, right? Over the years we might save money. Think about that. That's being fiscally conservative. Period. That's number one. Number two, when you're talking about policy, when you're talking about economic policy, and you're talking about being an America Firster, which is what the legendary Donald Trump was pushing for a number of years, and everybody, he's racist. Oh, they were going crazy. Well, okay. He's horrible. He's a bad man. But when you think about it, it is 10 times superior for the environment to do that. 10 times. Now, the globalist cabal, which is, yes, the Democrats, yes, Biden, yes, Obama, but also many swamp Republicans. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have global trade. We've had globalization since the British basically, took over the earth with their navy, and they were moving stuff with that East India Company, the Dutch East India. I guess the Dutch were involved there too. So the Dutch were big on globalization as well. But yes, ever since the world has been trading by boat, we've been globalized. So nobody's against global trade. You're going to have global trade. But the idea that you're going to offshore just about half of your manufacturing to a place across an ocean, the biggest ocean in the world, right? Not just any ocean, the biggest ocean in the world, we're going to offshore, and then we're going to have to use ships to go back and forth, burning coal, polluting the environment. Why are we doing that? And why aren't Republicans standing behind Donald Trump and saying, you know what he's saying is going to save the planet? If we did what he said, not only would that be good for America, that would be good for the environment, the global environment. Everybody would benefit, right? Or we don't have anybody that's going to say that because they're too busy attacking, right? They want to be the top dog. And there was a lot of jealousy and resentment when Trump came into office. People like Paul Ryan trying to sabotage his every move. It was sad. It was really a disgrace. The American people made a decision. Whether you like it or not, they made a decision that it was time for some change. And the things that he was proposing, instinctively, the American people were correct. He has the right idea. This is correct. Why aren't we making more stuff here? That just makes sense. There was a minister of France many years ago. He was looking at the Dutch, who were great with needlework, and the Italians, who were great with glasswork. And he was like, you know what, we need to make some of these tapestries and stuff here, and some of this glassware. And he created some huge manufacturing cities in France where their economy boomed as a result from saying, you know what, we can make our own stuff here. It's not something, this is not a new concept. This is something that was done centuries ago, and that a lot of countries after that were like, yeah, if you can create your own industry, then that's much better than having to buy all this stuff from somebody else. So this outrage that we see, they're outraged by doing something which has been part of most countries' basic survival for centuries. But we don't want it. We don't want that to happen. And why is that? Because who owns the media? Who owns all these manufacturing entities that are going over there for the cheaper labor? Obviously, if you don't have any rules on what type of energy you use, I'm sure the energy is a lot cheaper over there, right? No regulations means cheaper. So today, I think it's kind of obvious that Republicans, by not tackling this issue, that they are superior in their approach on the environment by having an America First approach and policy, are basically surrendering the battlefield to the Democrats. And the thing is, you can look at 100 different topics and you can say, well, why don't they argue this? Why don't they argue that? And a lot of it is arrogance and a lot of it is laziness. Okay? That's one thing that the Democrats have. They're wrong 90% of the time, but they're not lazy. They're arrogant. They're very presumptuous, okay? Nobody has probably more on that than the Democrats. But the pride is also in many Republicans, and there's a failure there, because what you're doing is you're saying, we'll just let them have their narrative. They love the narrative. Oh my God. There's nothing that a Democrat likes more than a narrative, because then they can just repeat it. There's no thinking involved. It's like the Borg. You will be assimilated. We're going to just keep pounding this over and over and over again. And if you don't have the intellectual faculties to say, you know what, this is all hogwash on your own, well, then you're probably going to fall for the nonsense. But the problem is that the lack of conservative media means that nobody is pointing this out and saying, you know what, despite all the rhetoric from the left on the climate change, they actually have a failed economic policy. Permanent normalized trade relations with China has been a disaster for the environment. And that falls on the Clinton administration. Why is nobody pointing this out? Why is nobody saying, well, why don't we measure how many cubic tons of pollution have been emitted from the Chinese since this PNTR, that's what they call it, was passed? Why don't we do that? Why don't we have this discussion? And how much pollution it is for all these ships coming across the ocean. Why aren't we talking about that? That should be a discussion. The Republicans should be pounding that home. But the problem is you have a lot of sellout Republicans. They're not for the America First agenda. They're for the corporate class. But that's where everything has changed since Donald Trump, and there's a lot of Republicans that are fighting back on this. They don't. That's why we're talking about conservative political forum. Okay, I don't claim to be a Republican because what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything unless you're standing on conservative principles, because that's what the Republicans should be. But in many instances, they're not. And that's why we have a problem. That's where Donald Trump comes in. Donald Trump comes in and says, you know what? We're going to be the party of the working man. We're going to go back to, this is America for America. And a lot of people are like, what? They're, how can we do that? This is, and that's not to be anti-corporate. The corporation is very important. The corporation provides jobs, just as labor provides the work that makes the corporation wealthy, right? Everybody participates and everybody is supposed to benefit. This is the new dichotomy of politics, okay? Trump is not anti-corporate. He's just pro-worker and pro-corporate, but pro-America as well. And so this all has to be tied together and all has to be looked at as part of one movement. That's where a lot of Republicans have the problem. They're thinking, well, who's contributing money to my campaign? Well, we got these corporations that are making a whole lot of money with these relations with China. And so they become stakeholders. Because what does the lawyer think? Right? How does the lawyer think? The lawyer's thinking, who's my client? Who is my client? You have all these people that you've elected that are lawyers. Who's my client? The client isn't the voter. The client is who's giving them the money to run. That's the client. So if you're wondering why these people don't represent your interests, it's because they're trained to think of representing a client. That's who are they representing? Their client. But what you don't get is that the voter is not the client. The corporations who are giving them this money are their clients. And that goes on both political parties. It's not just a Democrat or Republican thing. It's something that's been going on for a long time. It's why we shouldn't elect lawyers. Okay? We're going to go into that later. I'm going to enjoy going into that. Because let me tell you something. Donald Trump spoke correctly that the media is the enemy of the people. But the media is often the puppet of the attorney class. And it is the attorney class that is actually the one that's ruining our country. And they are our greatest enemy. So while the media is the enemy of the people, the attorney is our greatest enemy. And that's why you're not going to hear much truth from most of these politicians, because most of them are attorneys. Go and look, Republican, Democrat, lawyers. We should never elect a lawyer again to President of the United States, ever. Ever. We'd solve a lot of problems, believe me. Let's elect people who can think, okay? Not people that are focused on taking care of their client, okay? Because you are not going to be their client. So, God bless you. This is my first little YouTube post. It's not going to be all fancy. I'm just going to sit up here and talk. Break some things down. I'm going to do one thing at a time, and hopefully it'll be worth my while. Maybe I get a following, whatever. We'll see. But I think it's important to put these things out there. So that's what we're going to do. God bless you. Have a good day.